Kendall in Seattle. Thank you. Good call. Kendall, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Hey, what's up? From last week, remember?
Yes.
Hey, yeah.
You're not just saying that, are you?
No, I totally remember.
And it's kind of funny because last week was just the objective, subjective truth and morality episode.
Yeah.
Like everybody called in about that. So I might have a couple of the things you said mixed up with a prior caller.
Right.
But
Right.
but as long as we're not just having the exact same conversation. Yeah, as long as we're not having the exact same conversation, we're bringing new topics.
No.
Assuming that people haven't seen last week's episode, Kendall, do you want to give us like a 5-second summary of what we talked about last time so we know exactly who you are?
Sure, I'll try. So yeah, I asked you, if Christianity was true or proven true, would you become a Christian and by repenting your sins?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I actually. Oh, no. What I was going to say, Kendall, is when I went back and watched that episode, I did have a couple thoughts after the fact. And
sure, go ahead.
I think I want to clarify them. And so one of them.
I wanted to clarify mine too.
Cool.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So what I wanted to clarify is you said if it turned out that God was real, we could verify it and we were convinced, would we repent of our sins and believe? Well, the thing is I would definitely have no choice to believe because it's obvious right there. Now the repenting of sins thing is kind of interesting because if I know that there's a gun to my head, I'm going to do what I need to do to stay alive. Right? If somebody was going to throw me into eternal damnation, yeah, you better believe I'm going to do the hokey pokey or whatever it takes not to go there. But that doesn't mean that I think that God is a good guy. Mm-hmm. I actually think that somebody who would do that kind of thing is reprehensible in the extreme. But that doesn't mean my actions would be different. There are even atheists in the comments underneath who are saying, how could you believe a God that was so evil? And it's like, those are different ideas.
Yeah.
Entirely different, because you can believe in something that's evil, right? We don't want to make the mistake of going, the Holocaust was terrible. It just makes me feel bad to think about, therefore it's not true.
Right.
Something can be bad and still true. And so I just wanted to make sure that I clarified, and thank you for giving me the opportunity, Kendall, by calling in, of saying, I would believe that God is there, and I would do what it takes not to go to hell. I would also think that God is a moral monster.
Right. Well, I don't think that's the right way to describe it. That's not really a good example. But maybe I can touch upon that later if we have time. I just want to get right to the issue. Or the description, or what I was trying to say. So we were talking about so you guys wanted a clear definition of personal preference and kind of subjective morality. So
yes, we were asking you for that last week.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you did your homework.
Personal preference.
Hold on a second.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I wanted to get this right. So personal preference is a set of qualities that make a person or thing distinct from another. And, morality is kind of the recognition of the distinction between good and evil, or right and wrong. Okay, so let's just say, murdering Jews is wrong. Okay, so now if that is true, the question becomes, says who and why is that wrong? So according to objective morality, murdering Jews is wrong because God says it's wrong, and God says it's wrong because it's inherently contrary to his own nature, which involves harming the well-being of sentient life.
I think that is a very well-stated description of that.
So I like that description.
I just wanted to...
sorry, are you not done yet? Don't want to interrupt you if you're on a roll.
Yeah. Because I wanted to make it so you can respond the best way. That's all. This is your show and everything, but
No, go for it.
Yeah. And
So,
also, sorry. I was going to say there's also a bit of a delay. I was actually speaking to someone recently who called in, and they didn't recognize the delay, and we didn't recognize the delay until like a week later when we watched it, and it sounded like we were talking over people, and that's not the intent. So please go ahead.
Right. I got you. So according to subjective morality, that is wrong because society says it's wrong, and society says it's wrong because it's objectively wrong to harm the well-being of sentient life. And then personal preference is it's wrong because society said it's wrong, and society says it's wrong because they said so, or they didn't like it. In other words, truth, when it comes to personal preference, truth is relative and morality is relative. And objective morality, it's truth is objective and morality is objective.
Okay, well, let's
try.
That's actually perfect. Let's zoom out just a little bit. So is it God's subjective opinion what's moral and immoral?
Is God's is this moral or moral? I'm not sure how to yeah, it is, but it's based upon his moral character, which is objectively moral.
That sounds, I got you. That sounds like a special rule you're making for your God that we don't get to put anywhere else.
Right. And well, why can't I just say that things are objectively moral because I've decided that they're objectively moral and they're my preference because they come from my personal character?
Because you're a contingent being.
Oh, okay.
Contingent being, and God is not a contingent being. So he has a right. He has the authority. He is absolute.
So we're going down the
subjective morality and objective morality.
It sounds like we're going down the ontological route. I don't think so. Here's my challenge. I don't think you're justified in making that claim about God. I'm not saying that you're wrong, and I would love for you to show me that you're right. But from where I'm sitting, where I've seen in the conversations that I've had, I have not yet seen a good justification for that. And so my question to you is, why? So you're giving all of these properties to God, including that God is a non-contingent being.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that?
Well, I mean, it's, it was kind of going off of the question from last week. It's a hypothetical question. So it's like, even if, it's not true, remember, it's if it was proven true that Christianity,
Yes. Yes. And we grant.
But if you want me to go, just answer that.
Right. We grant a lot of these hypotheticals to get to the meat of the issue, right? So we're like, okay, well, if God were real, what about objective morality makes you think that it comes from that God, right? And so we're having that conversation. But if we get to the point where you circle back to, it's objective morality because of God, now we have to talk about God and whether or not God exists, right? So we had a hypothetical conversation, well, if God existed, to get to the meat of the issue, which turns out to be whether or not God exists. So now we have to dig in here.
Yeah, and I think one of the good ways to do that is to try and draw comparisons. So you say that your God is non-contingent. I will say that I am non-contingent. How do we determine? How do we piece that apart?
Well, obviously, it would be science. How do we determine truth? That's epistemology. Obviously, determining, that's something different. I mean, sure, if you want to talk about, that's kind of going away from what we were talking about. I was trying to get the meat of the issue, but sorry.
No, that's okay. You're making a statement about the ontology, the existence of that God, and not whether or not we think about that. That is fair. Now, in evaluating that, we do have to think about it. And so that is where we move into epistemology. Right. And so you made a truth statement. I don't think it's justified. And so what I'm probing is, what's your justification? Because if you have a good justification, I would like to have that too. So you said that your God is non-contingent. Okay. Well, how do we determine the difference between your non-contingent God and non-contingent Eric? You said science?
Well, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I agree. We could take a 23andMe test for Eric. Can we do a 23andMe test for God?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. That was the whole point of the question. Is like, if that was true, would you even repent? Would you, because it goes back to truth. We were talking about if your answer was, the question, would you answer is yes? If that answer is yes, then your reasons for being an atheist is based upon intellectual reasons. But if your answer is no, then it's not based upon, it's just based on personal bias. Yeah, so I don't see the point of even answering that question. You know what I'm saying? Because if your answer isn't yes to the question, then what's the point?
I'd be happy to clarify. So we hit that last week. Mm-hmm. I think moving into this week, we moved from is to ought.
Yeah. And
the is the ontological point. Now we moved into ought. Right. Ought. So the question that got brought up was objective morals. Right. Where does that come from? Right. And so B said that they are the source for objective morals. You're saying God is the source for objective morals. And so when we asked you to piece those apart, you kind of appealed to that's not the conversation. If you don't want to have that conversation, fine. But we were trying to follow you where you were going.
Oh, okay. I'm not. Oh, okay. I'll just go with it. I mean, I just didn't feel like it was, relevant, but I'll just go with it. So, what was your question again? I'm sorry.
How do we tell the difference between a contingent and a non-contingent being? So far, both of us have claimed about the same thing. So neither of us are contingent. How do we start to piece apart the difference between us and your God? How do we test that claim?
So the difference is well, I guess Jesus. It would be Jesus. What he's done, he has basically proven through his life that he was. Well, hold on. Give me a second.
Sure, take your time.
Yeah, give me a second, just real quick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
In the meantime.
Not too long, obviously.
Actually, V and I can talk in the meantime. I think that's an interesting place to come from is that contingent, non-contingent. I know you and I have spent late nights talking about this particular subject. But what I think the problem may be for Kendall here is that I think that you can test a lot of things about us.
Right.
But if you cannot do that same test for God, then
those tests aren't a good metric to use in the first place.
Exactly. And that's okay. That just means that we need to find a metric that works for both.
Right.
And
right.
If that's the case, then that is a good challenge.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that statement is justified.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. So what would be a test that you could run on both God and Eric and me?
Unless you want to go with something else. I wanted to try.
No. I'm ready. I got this. This, man. All right. So the criteria and really determining whether God is, omnibenevolent is the laws of absolutes. So, the attributes of God would have to work in accordance with each other. He is who he is, law of identity, and he cannot be who he is at the same time, the law of non-contradiction. So he cannot make himself cease to exist. He cannot make a square circle because that would conflict with his omniscience. And so he has to be true to his attributes.
Wait,
to do otherwise was to own. deny himself. So this means that the objective moral values cannot exist without an objective moral lawgiver to ground those truths into existence. So to prove it, I'm about to get it. To prove it,
you made a lot of claims there. I would hate to not respond to some of those because you made a bunch of them really quickly.
Right. Well, I was just making. Okay, go ahead.
Oh no, that's okay.
That is actually a really interesting argument. I don't know if I've heard it in that configuration before, so I'm excited. I've
definitely thought about it in that configuration. I don't know if I've heard it in that configuration.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the all powerful, the one that really stood out to me is God can't make a square circle, because I think that contradicts omnipotence.
Well, that was my question. We are defining an absolute non-contingent God being contingent on the laws of logic. So does that mean that God is contingent on the laws of logic and logic is actually what is non-contingent? Like, it feels like we're just pushing it down to, that infinite regress to stop it. Whatever stops that infinite regress is non-contingent. Yeah. And we just put the word on it. So based on your explanation, Kendall, my question is, doesn't that make God contingent on logic?
No, that's kind of like the same. That's like the youth rule dilemma, but you're applying it to the whole logical absolutes. No, like I said before, with the moral part, murder is wrong because God says it's wrong, and God says it's wrong because it's inherently contrary to His nature, which is objectively good. You can say the same thing with the logical absolutes.
Well, I'm also bound by the laws of logic. Does that mean that I am the source of the laws of logic?
No, it doesn't mean that. I mean, okay. No.
So I'm confused why one means God is bound by the laws of logic, therefore He must be the source of logic. So I'm also bound by the laws of logic.
No, I didn't say the source. He is logic.
I am logic.
That's His definition.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually what God is.
Okay, so we're defining V as logic.
Yes, God is the logical absolute. He is
the illogical absolute.
He's logic, and
this is getting a
he that's what He is. I can give you this is not me making stuff
here's
up.
The thing.
I can give you.
Yeah, is that is not a good answer.
Why is that?
Because I just gave you a defeater. The defeater is apply that exact same definition to literally anything else, and I don't think you can make it tell the difference. Actually, I think you could even apply that to non. Say that this book is logic. I could say that this cup is logic. It makes just as much sense.
Right. This is. I was trying to get to your overall point, is that to determine that this is true, that the difference between you and God, because you can just say anything. In fact, you can say my God said this and my God said this, and then we're back to it being subjective.
It's the whole point of this book about to make that.
Yeah, I think you got it really good. You answered the initial question, right? Which is, what is a test that we could use to test both a non-contingent God and a contingent person? And it's adherence to the law.
I want to get to that.
Okay, cool. That is a good proposition, but we just defeated it by saying that it applies to both, so it doesn't weed anything out. So it's not useful to make a differentiation, right? Because if God is compelled by the laws of logic because He is logic, and I'm also compelled by the laws of logic, then that's not actually logic. Because I'm logic. I was trying to avoid that because it's getting annoying. But
no, I want that as a name.
No, do you see where we're coming from? I think it was a good try, and it was a good example of something that could be applied to both theoretically, but it does apply to both, so it doesn't cancel one out. So we have to find something else.
It's like saying the murderer has brown hair and all of your suspects have brown hair.
Yeah. That was just a part of it. You got to start with philosophy in order to get to the empirical part. That science is guided by philosophy. So I was just getting to the philosophical part and then get to the empirical part. You got what I mean? So all that needs to be proven to, yeah.
Well,
Don't you agree with that, right?
I think that there are different ways to approach it. I think that if there were physical empirical proof of God, that these conversations would probably not be necessary. But
no, not necessarily, but
really, I mean, yeah, if we were
there's a reason a priori arguments are the things that we use to try and prove God, because
yeah. So, but anyway,
yeah,
I don't
get to what you want to do.
I don't think you passed that test. I think the logic that you brought isn't sufficient. I would love for you to bring.
Right, it's not.
Okay, I'm glad you agree.
It's not. I was going to get. Yeah,
so
it's not enough. It's not enough. I agree. I said I agree.
Okay, let's throw that one out though. If it's not useful, then let's throw it out.
Well, no, it's a starting point to where I'm going to get to.
But it's a bad starting point. We just agreed that it's not a good point, so I bring it up. See, that's the thing is that's something that we've seen over and over again.
Yeah,
is a whole lot of people calling in, making a point, saying, you know what, that's a really good, I'm not, and then the next day using the exact same argument. Why? I'm not asking you for you to answer for everyone, but just for Kendall. Kendall, if you go out and you use that argument that we just talked about and we agreed is a bad argument, then why don't you bin it? Toss it in the trash.
No. It's not a bad. I didn't mean it like that. I didn't say it was a bad argument.
Okay, so how is it a good argument?
It becomes a good argument based upon the evidence once you support it.
So we asked you, and we explored that idea fully with you, and maybe just the test that we applied today wasn't a good test. But Kendall, I challenge you to, and you do your homework, which is amazing. Hold on, I got a sound effect and I never got to do it. A caller did their homework. We love it. Kendall, I challenge you to come up with a good test to be able to tell the difference between V as a non-contingent being, or if you're uncomfortable with that, this mug, myself, or this book, and your God being non-contingent. Because I think that would be really interesting to explore, because I feel like that's where the argument fell apart.
I don't know about that. I think you just didn't allow me to finish.
Oh,
that's what it was.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to do that, but I do have it. I do have an eye on the clock, so I do want to make sure that we get to all the callers.
Right, man. Right, I got you. I was trying to do that though, be as fast as I can, but it's all right. We can probably just do it at a different time.
Man, say your piece. Go for it.
Are you sure? Okay. So yeah, I was just going to say that all that needs to be proven to show that God is, omnibenevolent, is to prove that it's the Judeo-Christian God who laid out the moral standards and duties in the Bible. So an example would be Jesus. He's supposed to be a personification of God's absolute moral goodness and authority. Because he fulfilled the moral law by not breaking the moral laws within the Old Testament, and then living a sinless life, as well as revealed himself to be God from the resurrection. As a result, Jesus became an objective moral lawgiver that grounded those objective moral laws into reality that are now written in New Testament scripture. So that's the difference. You don't have a sinless lifestyle. You can't. That just shows that you're contingent.
No,
Jesus is not contingent.
Are you saying that Jesus wasn't contingent? Because I'm pretty sure there's a virgin birth that was required to happen before he showed up.
Yeah. So I'm saying that's what it's supposed to be in the Bible. So that's the difference.
So here's the thing. There was a caller a long time ago. With Jenna,
Okay.
Who was wondering, they said that they were Jewish, and they said that the only way that I could be wrong, they told me, is if I can find a fish with no scales and no fins.
Right.
Then I would know that God does not exist. And I feel like that's starting to get in that direction, because
right. You could say, well,
you need to live a sinless life to even compare to the thing that I'm saying and not backing up. And I think that that's not a good way to go about it.
It's like saying, we can prove that coffee is hot because here's a hot thing, and now we just have to prove that coffee exists. Right? There are it doesn't quite follow. That's not a valid.
But I think you broke up so many different arguments in there that I'm just tickled. I'm excited. We do need to move on to the next caller, but Kendall, thank you for calling in, man.
Yeah, definitely call back.
Sure. Okay then. Thanks for speaking, man. See ya.
Absolutely.